calm down. I need to I've got too much stress going on, and my pelvic floor is the first one to raise its hand.
You don't even have to calm down. You just have to do the stirrup pose. Because I don't feel like the body has to lead. The calming happens after. Let's relieve the tension and pressure and intensity in the body, and the mind follows.
Yeah.
Because all of this rationalization, well, I'm stressed, but we only know that because we're tuning into a physical cue. Whenever you feel stressed, it's a little more easy to recognize, mentally recognize stress. Now go back to the physical. Are you gripping your toes? I am.
Yeah.
Release your feet, and then it helps the mind relax.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the all-important breath. How does the all-important breath fit into bridge? And I'm going to say that maybe it depends, because it depends on what part of the body you're tending to, right? So if I'm tending to stability in my pelvis, I would want to elevate on an exhale. If I'm tending to opening in the thoracic spine, I would want to lift on an inhale.
100%. Yeah. And then just have your people go up into a bridge and see what happens. So this is your information gathering. Show me the pose with nothing, no cueing at all. And then, because most people know the basic shape, right? Once they know the basic shape, just have them do it and then see what happens to their breathing.
Yeah.
They stop breathing, just have them breathe. And as they restart breathing, where does that inhale go? And is the exhale doing anything?
That would be interesting, because I can imagine, first of all, you can imagine not breathing. Second, you can imagine an inhale and then not the completion of an exhale. Because if you think about it, if we're getting the thoracic expansion, the ribs are spreading wide, there's a little more room for the respiratory diaphragm to move. And on the exhale, we wouldn't be necessarily pulling the ribs in to help squish and to close out the ribs and to close out the lungs. So it could be a really lovely place to get more engagement with muscular tissue without the hardware supporting it.
This is where it's really helpful in the therapeutic setting if you can work with someone in their sports bra or work with them with their shirt off, depending on their comfort level, or at least tuck the shirt up into the bra if they're wearing one so that you can see what's happening. So people tend to have wide sprung lower ribs. It's the most common shape, and often they have that anterior tilt in the pelvis. And so they'll come into bridge, and the distance between their pubic bone and the xiphoid process, that bottom tip of the sternum, is massively long. And so they've just sprung these areas open even further. They need to come back down, press forward through their heels to engage their abdominals, come up with a little bit more hip extension first, so more abdominal engagement. The top of the pelvis moves back towards the floor slightly or a lot, and then lift up, maybe more of a glute bridge and not so much of a yoga bridge. So that person needs to work on that containment. Yes, use the external obliques to narrow the ribs and stop them from flaring open, because those muscles are so weak. Once they're at that very exaggerated state in bridge, they can no longer effectively contract to contain. So
it reminds me, it makes me always think of a fish that's been gutted, if you ever gutted a fish.
Yeah.
It's like from the xiphoid process to the pubic bone, it's like everything.
Just, that's a good sound effect. That's what it does.
That's what it feels like.
Oh, we got to sew that back up.
Yeah.
And so then you're not tucking the shoulders under, you're not puffing the rib cage, puffing the chest towards the face, you're not working on any of that kind of entirely valid stuff, but for this population less. And then you have the very narrow ribbed people who tend to have a very tucked pelvis. They can pull back through the heels isometrically, start with that softer arch, lift into the pose, and then really let that front area expand. Let their abdominals lengthen, which people are terrified to do. They're like, I have to engage my core at all times.
Yeah.
Actually, you can let your core, the front core, the abdominals, you can let some of those lengthen, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes me think too, back bends, working with people with trauma, there's a lot of vulnerability into opening up, and sometimes the body is doing that closing as a guarding, as a protection. That is another argument for always moving where the invitation is in the body. So you move, and then when you get a request to pause, you don't power through necessarily, because it's not just the tissue you're working with a lot of different parts of the system, and just being really respectful and offering the opportunity to create more space when the body is welcome to it.
Yeah, it's so fascinating to connect the trauma piece. I did a breathing workshop with a group of people in recovery for addictions of various types. And so general population, probably 70% of the population, maybe 80% have those wide sprung ribs. Only 2 people in a room of 20 had. Everyone else was way too narrow. Now, they were also meditators, so they had worked for years and years on lengthening their exhales, which tends to narrow the ribcage. So again, I would never see this if I didn't
see it,
palpate the ribs and literally see it. Like, please lift your shirt with their permission, because it was a breathing workshop. We're going to look at your ribcage. I have to see it. And everyone was eager to, because they wanted to know, oh, am I a wide or am I a narrow? And this has profound implications on getting into people's assumptions. I thought I was supposed to lengthen the exhale. You can lengthen your exhales so much that you're dizzy and anxious and over breathing, and everyone needs to regulate these assumptions. Things aren't universally good. A hammer, you could smash windows or kill someone with a hammer. It's all about how you use it. You could build a house and do some wonderful constructive things. So all
of killing someone.
I was trying to find really positive examples.
Yeah.
You could hit a nail on the head and not your thumb, whatever. But what I'm saying is these things are neutral. Nothing's like a golden calf that's sacred and perfect, and everybody should do this.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
So how someone breathes in bridge gives you a lot of good information. And I would think that the more thoracic extension, the yoga bridge, is good for people who are missing that pump handle action in their breathing. So their sternum doesn't lift towards their face. They're so afraid of chest breathing, or they're so kyphotic and rounded through the upper back that their chest is very rigidly stuck downwards. Just getting someone to feel how it is to breathe and feel the chest lift is a game changer.
The thing that's cool too is because you're in bridge, right? Often people access that breath with their shoulders. But if your shoulders are basically pinned on the ground, you're in this posture where there's feedback, your shoulders are not moving, the breath in that part of the chest cannot be a result of you just elevating your shoulders.
Every pose is a breathing pose, and every pose limits the breath into one or more areas of the body, thereby allowing it somewhere else.
And I was thinking too, it would be fun on some level to ask people to play with coming up into bridge with an inhale or an exhale and see how it serves them or doesn't serve them, and if they notice any difference at all.
And that's the simplest way to do it in a group class. Come up with an inhale, how does it feel? Come up with an exhale, and they get to learn, wow, breathing isn't just incidental.
Our body does it, knows how to do it. Don't worry about it.
Breathing is a physical thing. And obviously it has these profound effects on all these other systems. Obviously it's a chemical thing, but bottom line, mechanically, it's also the physical thing. Muscles are generating this. And so when you come up with an inhale or an exhale, certain muscles are retreating. So it's that drafting example, right?
Yeah.
Lance Armstrong comes up, the inhale's leading, it's really different.
Yeah. Bridge is one of the best places for us to connect with the pelvic floor breathing, primarily because the hips are higher than the heart. That's a back bend, standard back bend. But it means that the weight of the organs is not bearing down on the pelvic diaphragm or the pelvic floor tissue, whatever you want to call it. I like the pelvic diaphragm because that's more accurate and it sounds more hospitable and friendly than floor or hammock. I don't like either of those terms. But anyway, so this is really good, supported. So if you come to bridge pose, supported, and then you're going to find your breath. And I like to come to what I call the supported stirrup pose. So I will bend my arms alongside my torso, upper arms are pressing into the earth, and then I'll raise my hands to the ceiling so my forearms are perpendicular to the floor, reach my legs up to the ceiling, so now it's a supported shoulder stand, and then just bend my thighs to come to rest in my hand. So my hand is like the stirrup, right? It's not really happy baby because I'm not really trying to curl my tailbone. But I have complete openness, access, awareness of my pelvic floor, right? And the bony landmarks for the pelvic floor, pubic bone, tailbone, sit bone, right? That's the space I'm paying attention to. And when I breathe on an inhale, the pelvic diaphragm broadens, right? We want to visualize the sit bone's pulling away from the midline, the pubic bone, the tailbone pulling away from the midline, that diamond getting wider. And on the exhale, it naturally comes back to the center, and there's an elasticity to the tissue. It just naturally draws in and up, right? And so if I'm here in this posture with my hips elevated in the supported bridge pose, I can let go of any concerns of what I'm trying to hold in and guard, right? So often we hold in and guard our pelvic floor from a standpoint of feeling safe, right? If we've been sexually assaulted, we're going to be gripping and holding on there. If we have had any instances with urinary incontinence, there's a reaction to contraction. If prolapse is a concern, you'll be contracting. More often than not, what we do is we have this tonic, tight tissue. And so the way that we build strength is the same way you do with any short tissue, is you have to first let it lengthen so that when you contract, it has range of movement and it can get blood flow and it can get hydrated and the tissue can become healthy and dynamic and strong, right? So use the breath as an opportunity to let the pelvic floor relax in this really safe posture where there's not going to be any risk to letting the tissue relax. And then you can really understand the pulse of the breath in the full core, because on the inhale, the respiratory diaphragm broadens, it flattens, and it presses down into the contents of the core. To make room for that added pressure, the pelvic diaphragm broadens and expands and makes room for that added pressure. And then on the exhale, both of those diaphragms come back into the center and rise up. So on an inhale, there's this broadening, there's this expansion, and on the exhale, there's coming back in and up. And if you can start to feel both of those diaphragms moving in sync in response to the breath, then you get to start to create the healthiest thing for our pelvic floor, which is a full core breathing, right? Where the respiratory diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm work in sync, where the posture is such that the respiratory diaphragm presses down into the contents of the core, and it's not like there's a dam or interference because the waist is bent or it's arched. It doesn't leak. That's a really good term. So you need to be in a safe room, elevate your hips, find a supported bridge, maybe come to the supported stirrup pose, and then just see your body move with the pulse of the breath and trust that it is getting healthy and hydrated and dynamic and strong simply by getting out of the way.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of teachers love that pulsation. And they talk about pulsation, which might be abstract for some people. How does the body feel when it's expanded? How does it feel when it's contracted? How does it feel when it's held?
Yeah.
And how much intra-abdominal pressure are we creating by this constant holding and this inability to move into this? Things expand, things contract, things get really big and get really scary, and then things pull back and retreat, and then it's okay. And everyone's afraid of that. And it's so interesting how it's reflected in the body. And especially, like you were saying, people come in with this held state, and when you hold and there is no pulsation, there's so much buildup of the pressure. If you're working with someone, you're by their head or off to the side, and you've covered their pelvis with a blanket, their lower body with a blanket if you need to, or whatever sort of gives them, because it's such a receptive position, it's an open position, it's tricky. Once you have rapport with client, they often are like, wow, it's so amazing for them to actually feel this movement because of the inversion opportunity that bridge offers. Such a mild inversion, so sustainable with props, that you have this time.
I think that for pelvic health, if you were to just do that, of course, add that to your list of things daily, but that in and of itself is so healing.
Yeah, and I feel so many of these things are natural. We're restoring something that the body has forgotten. We're giving permission. Yes. It might not be something that's like a 50-year habit. It could be a 2-year habit or a 10-year thing or a once-in-a-while thing. So you're very strategic with the use of these tools. I don't have to do it every day if I'm not having symptoms.
No. But it's funny because I now find when I get stressed out, my pelvic floor gets stressed out, it gets really crampy and tight, and I know that because all of a sudden I've got like frequency, urgency, I've got urgency that comes first. And I'm like, God damn it. I need to calm down. I need to I've got too much stress going on, and my pelvic floor is like the first one to raise its hand.
You don't even have to calm down. You just have to do the stirrup pose. Because I don't feel like the body has to lead. The calming happens after. Let's relieve the tension and pressure and intensity in the body, and the mind follows.
Yeah.
Because all of this like rationalization, well, I'm stressed, but we only know that because we're tuning into a physical cue. And this is so good. The yoga practice helps. I hold it all in my shoulders. I hold it all in my pelvic floor, or both. My feet really grip. I grip my toes when I'm tense, and I have plantar fasciitis, and it keeps coming back. Whenever you feel stressed, which is a little more easy to recognize, I mentally recognize stress. Now go back to the physical. Are you gripping your toes? I am.
Yeah.
Release your feet, and then it helps the mind relax.
Yeah, and that's such a good point too. And that's of course why, like being a yoga therapist, why I love it is because the body for me is a friendlier place, and it's a more efficient place to make change than the mind, the thinking mind, which is for me quite crafty and complex, and I work them both. I work all the different points of entry, and I work the spiritual path, right? And that's one of the things I love about yoga is we have these 5 layers, the koshas, and none is more important than the other. The thinking mind thinks it's most important, and it'll tell you it's most important, but finding that sense of balance, finding that sense of containment, and that sense of empowerment, and that sense of ease, we can get to it working all these different layers, and the physical body is a really efficient way to come in and say hi.
Oh, always my first choice. Never use the mind to solve the problems of the mind. It's just an endless loop, and we've all been there at 2 a.m. It's terrible.
It is.
Yeah, and I think that even though we're fairly cerebral people doing a yoga practice, we're using the mind hopefully appropriately, which is as a tool.
Right.
To say, okay, what are the biomechanics, reason through the different cueing, but what's always coming back to sensation, result, something in the physical body that's being manifested. The mind is in service of that. We're not just like mentally masturbating through bridge pose.
No.
This is only because we are so reverent with how powerful the body is once it's in good alignment.
Yeah, and it's funny because that's really what the practice is. All these different poses are ways to get your body back to the place where it can do its best work.
Amen.
Amen. So that's bridge pose.
Yay. It's so simple.
Definitely not a consolation prize. It's a really amazing pose. And yeah, I think one of these days, Sarah and I are going to go on the road and we're going to do a class. It'll be a 2-hour class.
The year of bridge, and there's 52 ways to get to that pose with almost completely different sequences, different intentions.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
There's so much.
There is so much. Okay, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you, so please let us know what you'd like to hear more of, what you'd like to hear less of. We're open to that too, and if there's anything you want to discuss. So have a good day.
Hi, Jane.
Bye.